From the war-ravaged and bloody soil of Vrax, the Krieg stand tall despite all of the horrors and atrocities that they witnessed at the powers of chaos and the incompetence of the Imperium. In the Siege of Vrax, we get to see what the Krieg really are and why a lot of people are so fascinated with them. It's one of my favorite reads so far this year, and today we're going to do a lore accurate list based off of that. The Siege of Vrax is a fascinating tale of strife and conflict that rips a world apart, bringing what had once been a holy site to its knees and turning it to chaos, while the Imperium tries to stand up and push back against it, despite its own bureaucracy fighting itself. We see fascinating tales of different Space Marine chapters getting involved, as well as the layers of bureaucracy that are causing issues for the Siege of Vrax to actually succeed. And throughout all of this, the story focuses on probably my favorite characters of the story, and those are the individual Kriegsmen. These Kriegsmen are in a constant battle for their lives, trying to just hold on a little bit longer and maybe gain some advantages here and there against forces who are driven by chaos or their own false zealousy that prevent them from really understanding that the rest of their world has embraced chaos and their leaders are heretics. Some of their foes go so far as to even believe that they're serving the Emperor all the way through their death, despite having turned against him. And throughout all of this, the Kriegsmen stand alone. They have support here and there, but their strive to take control of the capital and really gain a foothold on the planet is a bloody affair that costs a lot of lives. And this story really, really fascinated me that way. And I've often thought about doing a Krieg army. I'm not sure I want to. They don't fight the way I like to fight. As you can see, I'm a White Horse player. We also have our Channel Army above that and my Votan below that. But I like to move fast and smash things. That's kind of how I like to play. Not full world eaters. I like to have some tactics involved there, but I do like that style of gameplay, and unfortunately Kriegsmen can't really do that. But this book inspired me to at least do a lore accurate list video where I talk about what bringing the forces involved in the Siege of Vrax to the tabletop would look like. So let's dive into that army list and get going. Now, the current difficulty with this list is that the Krieg have some units, but they don't have a ton of them. So you would either have to kit bash one and use Cadians to kind of balance that out, or you'd have to just build it the way I did. My goal is to make it as lore accurate as possible with the models there, so you don't have to worry about kit bashing too much. So if you have alterations or changes you'd make, maybe using a Cadian Castellan and then kit bashing him to be a Kriegsman instead to give yourself an actual true warlord, not a bad idea. I would not be opposed to that. By turning the Cadian Castellan into a Krieg Colonel, you could actually get some pretty cool advantages, and I think it might not be a bad idea, but that would involve kit bashing and head swaps and things like that. So if you feel like you can do that, I would do that. But this list is purely I want to get started, what do I need to buy so that I can play. So because of that, our warlord for this is actually a Krieg command squad. We actually have 2 Krieg command squads in this list so that we can disseminate orders properly and get things moving and under command structures and give you kind of 2 focal points on the battlefield instead of 1. And that makes up our entire leader corps. We're not going to be adding anything else to it because the commissars are included in the command squads themselves. So there's not really any other leaders we can add to this list. If you wanted to tweak it and add some of their epic name characters that are not part of the Siege of Vrax, that's perfectly fine. Feel free to tweak it as you see fit. We're going to go to the core of our army. We are bringing in 6 boxes of Kriegsmen. This will make up the bulk of our forces and the movement we're doing. It's going to be a lot of slow plotting objective scoring is probably what we're going to be dealing with a lot, as well as point scoring on the non-killing points, just to make sure you can get enough points to win the game. Next, we're going to bring in 2 field ordnance battery teams. This is another very common Krieg tactic to give you a bunch of punch up close, and give you some indirect fire to cover your units as they advance, because they are not super strong and do not stand up well to big units like knights or tanks or space marines or chaos space marines or anything that can punch pretty hard. Next, we're going to have the Krieg combat engineers. I included 3 boxes of these, mostly because they are a major part of the story, and branches of this unit come up quite frequently, whether it be grenadiers or engineers or any of the other groups inside the engineers kill team. Next, we need 3 heavy weapon squads. These are going to be critical to maintaining and controlling objectives and lanes. They don't play a huge part in the story, because a lot of times the heavy weapon squads are behind the Kriegsmen as they advance, and only take over certain objectives and control points and choke points after a lot of the characters have done what they've done. They do have some in there, but just for army stability, these were needed as well. Next is my favorite guard unit, and that is the Death Riders. I included 3 units of Death Riders in this as well, so that you can have some fast-moving, striking units that can at least kind of deal with stuff and control edges and cause a little bit of a threat to your enemy, or clean up your backlines if somebody gets behind you. So these were an auto-include, plus, like I said, they're my favorite unit of the Kriegsmen themselves. Next, we're bringing 1 Basilisk in for some indirect fire with a little bit more of an oomph, as well as a Lehman Russ Destroyer. Lehman Russ Destroyer is actually a very important part of the story, so it was an auto-include there as well. And then I included 3 Chimeras. The story has other versions of the Chimera and the Taurus in the story that are named something different. I went with the Chimera just because I like them better than anything else, and on the tabletop they tend to play better for me from what I've seen in the few times I've played Guard. So those are what I included, and that is the entire list. It was a pretty short list with a lot of repeating units, but that's the Krieg. The Krieg don't have a ton of variation inside them. If you wanted to change things up and add an artillery unit or a field artillery unit, that would also work. I didn't add one here because the field artillery are almost never mentioned in the story, and I wanted to keep it a little bit more lore accurate to the story itself. In the Siege of Vrax books, they often reference the heavy artillery like the basilisks, but they don't reference the field artillery as much. I believe there's one mention when it talks about how one particular unit had all of their ammunition for their field artillery stripped right as they were about to charge, because they were the distraction for a different charge somewhere else. But other than that, I think that covers everything. Like I said, if you want to bring variants into this, please do. There was a lot of different directions I could have gone. I could have gone much more tank heavy if I wanted to, because there's an entire section of the book focused on the Krieg tank units. But for this, I wanted to represent the Kriegsmen that are the bulk of the story. So feel free to let me know in the comments below what you guys think of this army, if it would play well, and if you think that there's anything that I missed in the story or you would change as well. Okay, so now that we've talked the army list, let's talk how much this is going to cost you to build. Guard units are never cheap, but this one was less expensive than I expected. And as always, remember, because of changes in boxes and limited quantities and things like that, we're doing this on a unit-by-unit basis exclusively. I would definitely recommend doing value boxes to acquire these units. They will be considerably cheaper. So, if possible, definitely do that, and get your hands on as many of the Kriegsmen as you can. You will need them. But for continuity's sake, today we are doing one unit at a time, line by line. First, we will do the retail cost. This is what it would cost you if you were to go into a Warhammer store and get every single box individually, or go on warhammer.com and do the same. Then we'll follow that up with the value total. The value total is going to be where you get if you went to Wargame Portal or Amazon. Obviously, your LGSs have varying discounts depending on their size, so I didn't include that in there, but I would definitely recommend going and checking out there and supporting your local LGSs if at all possible. Supporting your local game store is extremely important because it not only gives you a place to go in and physically buy stuff without having to wait for it online and risk it being damaged, but it also provides you a place to play if you don't have a group that you can play with regularly. A lot of my play group actually just moved out of state, so I'm having to find a new group, so my LGS is going to kind of be my headquarters to figure that out anytime I have a chance to go play. So the retail total on the Kriegsmen is going to cost $1,366, which isn't astronomical. I kind of expect them to be way more expensive, especially given that the Krieg Engineers are now a kill team. But they were fairly reasonable. And if you go with the value route, getting it from Wargame Portal and Amazon, that drops that price to $1,164.55. So that's a well over $200 discount. And like I said earlier, if you go check your local game store or you check your secondhand markets, you'll be able to find a lot of different Kriegsman variants. Some that may be painted really well. I'm currently working on slowly acquiring a sister's army that I'm going to be painting up. And I actually managed to find a model on eBay that is already very well painted, and I'm not going to have to touch, which is fantastic. And she fits well into the army scheme that I'm kind of mocking up right now anyways. So if you can find those, it'll save you a lot of time and effort. Plus, oftentimes find them for pretty cheap. There's a lot of people like me who likes to build out an army, play some games with it, and if it's not the right fit, they'll sell it. So it leads to a lot of discounted armies that you can find for pretty cheap and build out a list very quickly. So I always recommend checking secondhand markets, your local game stores, Amazon and Wargame Portal. None of those are sponsored, by the way. I do not make a dime if you go to Wargame Portal or not. If you're from Wargame Portal and you would like to sponsor me, I would love that as well. But now that we've talked cost, let's talk paint schemes. The Death Korps of Krieg will be an interesting one to paint. They are a very, very simple paint scheme. They are very dark colors across the board and may look a little washed out on purpose. Some regiments will have their own color schemes, whether that be gray, dark blues, blacks, a military OD green, or a khaki color to their overcoats and pants. Those tend to match, although you can have a little bit of variance there. Those same colors will reflect on their armor. Oftentimes they are very muted colors as well, whether they're wearing that inside or outside of their greatcoat. You'll typically see OD green, black, gray, or on occasion khaki, depending on what environment they're in and what type of army you're wanting to do. Next, we're going to be talking about an interesting one that I think you guys will enjoy, so make sure you come back next week to talk about a specific Krieg unit that I really enjoyed mocking up with a good friend of mine who goes by Krieg on TikTok. But other than that, your gas mask should be a different color than your great cloak and armor most of the time. Although if you're going for a desert feel and you want to go tan and a leather tan on the gas mask, that's great. The big thing to remember with the Krieg, they are trench builders, so they're going to be dirty and grimy. So using heavy washes and maybe some dry rust on boots and things like that to give it a muddy appearance works very, very well. So these honestly should be really easy to build and paint in a basic scheme. If you want to go and do detailed accents like changing button colors and things like that, that is fine too. I honestly think Kriegsmen would be one of the fastest armies to paint compared to others. You can go full camo with them as well. They do use camouflage on occasion, but that's entirely up to you. That's kind of the big perk of Kriegsmen. They don't have faces, so you don't have to worry about that. Their uniforms are very uniform. So once you have a paint scheme done and figured out, it's going to take you 4 or 5 passes with a paintbrush to get your individual guardsmen up and running. The only time you're going to have to spend will probably be on their weapons and firearms. But even those, honestly, I would suspect the Kriegsmen tend to mute those as well. So blackening barrels or matte finishing the stocks of rifles is what I'd expect. I expect them to use a lot of dark colors and things like that unless they're fighting in a very unique place. For example, if Kriegsmen were going to Armageddon, Armageddon is a very white and yellow sand color. So there I would expect them to be wearing a lot of khakis and light browns and trying to get as much matte finish as possible. But other than that, that's really all you need to know to paint Kriegsmen. They're super easy. They're not flashy. You're not going to be doing a lot of blingy metals like you would with like 1000 Sun or my Votan that have a lot of burnished brass and copper. Honestly, I'm tempted to see if I can get a box of Kriegsmen and paint them up, just to see if I'm correct on this. I have not personally painted Kriegsmen myself. I do have some Guardsmen that I have done, Gonsko specifically. They were pretty easy to do. The hardest part was all of the different colors I had to use on their camo cloaks to make them actual camo cloaks. But other than that, it was pretty easy. Guardsmen tend to be that way, which is good because you're going to have a lot of them. That's going to be the big part with this, is getting a system in place so you can knock out whole units quickly. But other than that, that's what you need to know to paint them.
Oh, sorry about that. Just enjoying a nice clean W energy. It's our new sponsor on this channel that I'm super, super excited to have involvement with. They're a clean energy company that specializes in unique flavors and a bunch of different varieties of products. In the past, I've had some health problems in my life, and I've become very particular about what I take in. And unfortunately, in the energy world and in the hydration and electrolyte world, it's pretty hard to actually be super detailed without spending a ton of money. And that's why I enjoyed W. They're a very clean and healthy alternative to your big energy drinks like Monster. But on top of that, they're actually designed with electrolytes. They also come with the electrolyte specific version called W Hydro, that is also a big part of what I take in. So I would definitely recommend checking them out at w.gg. And if you use code WARGAME, you can get 10% off any of your purchases. I also have a link down below in the description so you can go check out their starter pack.
And finally, how are you going to use these Kriegsmen tactically on the game board? Well, Kriegsmen fight in a very simple style if you want to stay lore accurate. They plod forward slowly and in a structured fashion so that you can control the game board and cordon your enemy into a corner and control the board that way, letting them just mow into your guardsmen while you keep closing the ranks and closing them into a corner so that your men take up less room, and you can keep that full weight of fire on them at all times. There are times when that will not work, especially if you're facing another horde army, but the mass casualties the Kriegsmen can cause just by massive amounts of fire will eventually whittle down your enemy, and you can cordon them into a corner. Also, relying on your big heavy units to do a lot of the assassinations, things like that, is going to be key. Also, indirect fire can be super helpful as well. So doing all of that is going to be a big deal. I did also forget to mention that I recommend using the Siege Regiment for your detachment on this force. But in reality, Krieg are a pretty simple, complicated army to play on the tabletop. They do have a lot of intricacies that you do with your orders and things like that, just as a guardsman. But their strategy is pretty straightforward. You know what you're going to do, your opponent knows what you're going to do, and they just have to try and stop you. So doing that is a really straightforward tactical maneuvering, and having the ability to score points using your units that'll be in chimeras is going to be important as well. So let me know in the comments below if you guys can think of any other strategies you'd recommend, or if you're a Krieg player, let me know what you guys think of this lore accurate list. And make sure you come join us next week, where we're going to do a video that's in our new style, where we take someone's custom regiment or chapter, and I write a short story about them, and we do a whole video about what they've created. So I will see you guys next week.